So today, a couple of things we're doing. Don't expect this to be as long a video as the last couple have been. So today we're basically just dyeing our gauntlet, getting it ready. We'll burnish the edges. I usually use like a beeswax for doing that. You can also use a number of different things. I've got a couple of things in my inventory, everything from some stones to some more traditional bevelers. But today, like I said, I'm just going to be using the beeswax. So yeah, we're going to be dyeing this black. I want to try to keep it looking similar to this one. I mean, this one, of course, is a lot more beat up. It's, God only knows how old it is. So we're going to be using this really bad bottle. Antique leather stain, Beavings, just general black. We'll see how that works. There's a couple of things I could have done to antique it a little bit more to match. I probably should take a little bit of sandpaper or whatever, rough up the leather a little bit, but I think I'm going to avoid doing that right now. So I am going to be just using a regular dauber. Normally what I do is I put my dye into small jars. It's just easier to handle. I like the wider mouth so I can get at it. I think it's just a good practice, as it were. So anyway, the other thing I'm doing today, you can see that I've got my hot plate over here, and in the hot plate I have some beeswax that's slowly melting. The reason I brought it out early, even though I'm not going to be doing that today, I noticed there was a bunch of wax on the burner itself, and there's some on the outside of the can. I decided to burn that off a little bit, so it's a little smoky and stinky in here, but no harm. It's not going to catch fire or anything, but hopefully it'll be ready for it tomorrow or the next day, depending on, I think we've got an event this weekend, so we're doing a lot of prep work for that, getting ready. Now, look at dummy. I don't think I have any latex gloves down here, so I am just going to try not to get my hands covered in dye. I'm going to use a dauber. I could use a sponge to do this. So, but I've got that handy, and then I'm just going to grab a rag over here. So I've got something kind of rub things off of. I'm going to close the door here. So I've got something to wipe the excess off with. I'm just going to do circular motions. Now, sometimes I'll dye both sides. Don't know if that's what I'm going to do this time around. What I'll do too is I'll get it to a point, and then as it's drying out, I'm going to wipe off the excess with the rag. And I'll give this a day to set properly. I mean, it's a alcohol base, I believe. I'm not sure. It's not an oil-based dye like the old ones. But rather than trying to hit it with the beeswax today and harden it finish the hardening process, sealing process. I give it a day, because I really don't want to run the risk of turning this into a great big chunk of bacon. One of these days what we'll do is we'll do some leather up, and we'll just do it, just so you can see what I'm talking about, what will happen if you have it too moist. So, alright, I'm just going to set that there for a moment. Alright, there we go. What I'll probably end up doing after I'm done with this layer of dye, I will probably use an antique finish or a sealer to go over that. Probably should have grabbed that off of the cupboard there, shelf that's right in behind the where the camera is sitting right now. I'll show you what I use, but most of them are just commercially available at your Tandy's, or for me it'd be at Lonsdale. Okay. Don't do this in your best clothes. You're wrecking pretty bad. I get yelled at. Well, not yelled at. She never really yells at me on that. She just gives me that long suffering look. That's why I can't have nice things. Yeah, between doing this kind of thing and working in the forge, I tend to be pretty hard on clothes. So, some would ask, why not bevel your edges with the wax before you put the dye on? Well, the simple answer is that the wax would act as a resist and would stop the dye from penetrating. So, something to think about. Now you also notice too on, you can see that it's coming up. Now, if you want to do a patterning or something, then yeah, add a resist on now, which would be good. And that way it doesn't betray, I guess. What I want to see is a little bit of a shine. I've got the excess off. I'm just going to check something on the old pattern. What I'm probably going to do is parts that have gone raw on the old gauntlets, I'm going to see if it'll take some dye, because that's one of the things with the older, over time, and wear and tear on the material, the wax seems to leave the body a little bit. Yeah, now I can feel that a little bit cold again. Yep. So now it's cold again, and you don't even, maybe by tonight or a couple hours from now, I might be able to run the risk of throwing it into the wax. Or I don't actually do immersion, I brush. I brush the wax on. Basically what I'll take is like a heat gun, and I'll heat the leather up using that. I could also put it in the oven for a bit and bring it up to a fairly warm temperature. I mean, not baking hot, right, but warm enough so that when the wax is touching it, when you put the wax on it, it doesn't just suddenly go cold and do what wax does. And I'll show you that tomorrow in the next video. And that the leather will actually soak it up and pull it in. Alright, so that's that. Now I'm just going to check something. Grab the old gauntlet here and look at the inside. Now, no, they didn't actually dye the inside. That's just probably the brown from the waxing. Because that's the one thing you got to remember too with waxing. What will happen is the wax itself will actually darken the leather. So it's something to keep in mind when you're putting your color on. I'm just going to test this just because. See what happens. Oh yeah, see, there's enough wax that is worn out of the leather and enough that I can actually add, some color back into the, so I might end up doing that. Yeah, we'll see. Put you back down there, old soldier. Okay, let's keep moving along here. I've already got plans for the next set of these that I'm going to do. How I'm going to change the pattern a little bit, decorate them. Yeah, of course. Already got floating around that idea. Hide the stitches better. I'm not one for leaving something undecorated. Now I haven't assembled this before. Like could have, sometimes what you can do is just simply add the plate. I didn't do that first. I'm going to put dye in underneath. Just find it's more thorough that way. I mean, technically I don't have to waste the dye under there, but I'm going to do it anyway. You may notice that on the, did I mention this already? I may not have. I'm using a coffee tin for my wax. Because I'm not doing immersion, I could use a pot or anything else. Because I don't actually need to dip the pieces in there. But one of the things you'll notice is I do not have this can sitting directly on the element. Many years ago, I still was in the habit of doing that, just leaving the pot right on the element. And what happened was it got so hot. Now the thing about the viscosity of wax, you got to think of it as it's not like water. It doesn't, when it becomes fluid, it's still got a fairly thick viscosity to it. And what happens because of that, heat moves through it, through convection of course, but it doesn't move through it evenly. So you can get a very hot wax building up like a thermal reaction happening down deep inside the wax. And what I had happen was that it actually got hot enough down near the element that the little amount I had in the pot, it combusted. It actually, and wax is flammable, right? So it was messy, and of course, because it came to that temperature suddenly, the cooler wax that was at the top, of course, shot up, and it was a mess. It was scary. It filled the whole studio at that time. I was back in, still living in Calgary, with just thick smoke. Fortunately, I wasn't working in the house. So now what I'll do is I leave an airspace so I can better control the temperature. I feel anyway. I feel safer with it. I really don't ever want to repeat that experience. So again, I'm just polishing off, rubbing off the excess here. Also tells me if I need to put a little bit more on, if the penetration isn't what I want. You can see this little thing. Now again, maybe less penetration is what we want. See, this is why I usually wear latex gloves. Even being careful, I'm still going to get wax on me. But it's life. I foolishly left them upstairs. I'm just going to put a little bit more. Okay. You can actually see how dull that is, I think, and then how shiny it goes when I'm wiping it off. Now the wax itself will act as a sealer, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now when I'm using the heat gun tomorrow, it'll be noisy, or in the next video I should say, because I'm not sure it'll be tomorrow. It'll be very noisy, so I'll have to speak over it. You have to bear with me. What I tend to do too with the element is as the wax melts, I'll actually turn it down just to limit it, and I keep an eye on the wax itself. It's really kind of neat because as you're watching it, you can actually see the wax doing its little convection thing as it warms up. Quick rule, if it looks like it's smoking, it probably is. If it's smoking, get it off the heat. That's it, you're done. Don't burn it. See if I can see my sealer real quick. So again, with your workspace, make sure if you're leery of it getting stuff or dye on it, put down some paper or something that is going to suck up the I'm just going to over dye just the edge a little bit because I know it's going to be sitting down on the leather. So when it's on there, don't want any of the, well, I'm going to try to avoid having the white leather show without having to go back over it with dye again. So yeah, definitely too wet to wax. So something to remember when you're doing this at home. I'm still getting stuff on me, so I'm going to regret that I didn't. Alrighty. Just enough to make it malleable again, actually. It's funny that way. Okay. Set those pieces aside for a minute. Take this guy again. Now, just going to go back over him. So there's a little bit of resistor wax or something that was on there, so it's not taking the dye. Not much I can do about that on this piece. Alrighty. So I'm just going to take some wax. Just going to burnish my edges. And this is just a chunk of beeswax I'm using. Because I'm going to be using beeswax on it anyway, it's not going to hurt it. While I'm thinking about it, put the old dauber away. Now, I don't tend to throw my daubers out. I'll use them over and over again a few times, depending on the projects. It's just, I mean, it can't get to the point where they're so hard, right, that they're just unusable. But the only thing I have a kind of a rule about is I do not mix the colors if you can help it. That's about the only thing I worry about. So again, just beveling my edges. Just doing another little prep. And I'm going to stitch the back plate on this part that rides over the knuckles. Okay. So those are now together, ready to go. Away. I'm going to be using something for the back plate there. I noticed that this old guy, that you can see where the rivets are across the back here. There's actually a non-ferrous plate inside. Don't know if it's aluminum. It's not steel, so it's either aluminum or brass, but it's not magnetic. It's not plastic from what I can tell and determine. So I'm gonna have to it might be plastic. It's hard to tell. But I am going to be putting something to add a little bit of rigidity into the back of this. So I'm going to have to source that and get that ready to go. Alright, set this aside for the moment. And then on the old guy, we notice, we can see that what they've used, it looks like it's a deer hide so I'm going to replicate that, and just fortunately for me, I do actually have some of the same material, so even the same color, which is good, so that's great. And then the leather that's in here, the soft leather, which is used to attach the knuckle rider and the protection for the fingers, the finger plate. I'm going to be using, I think, I've got it here. Yeah, I do. This looks like it matches fairly well in weight and in rigidity. Not that it needs to be rigid, but it does need to hold the stitches and not tear once it's in place. So I think this is what we're going to be using for that. For assembly, so we've got all the materials we need for assembly. There's actually one strap which is in there, which for the palm, across the palm, so we'll be doing that as well. And then, as I said before, we're going to be using this felt for our padding. Now they used, like I think I said in the first video, they used an open cell. So I'm going to substitute this boot liner for that. I just prefer it. It's a natural material. This is a wool, so it'll hold up reasonably well. And it gives good protection. So that's where we'll be going next. So we've got the materials we need and everything that we're going to require to finish this gauntlet off. And then we'll be looking at this one, the old one, and just see what we need to be able to do to just make sure that it's going to hold up as well. There's a couple of little repairs that need to be done on it here and through here. So, like I said, today was a shorter video. The next one will be a little bit longer, probably around an hour or so, but I think that's all it is for here today. So take care, guys. Remember to hit that like button, and for new content, remember to hit that subscribe. So take care, and cheers.